Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this session on writers' role in social change. In an era of climate crisis, migration debates, rising authoritarianism, and misinformation, writers have a pivotal role in facilitating social change by challenging power, by amplifying marginalized voices, and reimagining futures. So now we have with us Andrey Kurkov, Francis Combes, and Armand Gauz. And I would like to sort of get us started by asking you about your works and your national context, just so that we could give the audience a good introduction.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize. I begin by apologizing because sometimes my English will not be fine, like very subtle as my thoughts. So I apologize first, but I will do my best. And asking for my works and my words is a very, very great and large question. So I will try to do it right to the point. My work is for saying not only my word, but above all, a way is to find a stylistic way to say my word. Because as an author, I don't consider myself most intelligent than anyone in the world. We have the same level of intelligence. I, as an author, I can't explain you nothing that you can't understand. I can't. Because we have the same level and probably the same culture. And my work is to find a way to say this, find a style to make it stay into your mind.
Good morning. It's very difficult to be clear and easy to understand after this brilliant statement. My life actually was divided between 30 years in the Soviet Union and 33 years in independent Ukraine. I would say Soviet Union was a stable anti-democratic country where you knew how to behave, you knew what to laugh at and not to be punished for this, or what to laugh to be punished. And the post-Soviet life was completely different. And actually, I think I'm happy that I had this experience, because not only that I can compare the epoch of the last century in the Soviet Union and what is happening now and what was happening after 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, until 2013, the beginning of the big war of Russia against Ukraine. But also, I'm grateful that I'm getting more and more experience, and I'm sharing this experience. And actually, the task of a writer to share the experience and thoughts with the readers, and to leave the message for the readers of the future in order so that they could understand what was life like. Because history manuals give you dates and names. They don't give you emotions and feelings of people who lived through the changes, who lived through different historical events. I always loved diaries. From Franz Kafka's diaries, I understood much more about life 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, than from any other book by academic. And so I hope that the diaries that are written today, about today, will help the readers of the future to understand our life.
Thanks, Andrey. I am living in Paris, more precisely in the northern suburb of Paris, in a working class town, ruled for a long time by communists. I am a poet. I published 30 books of poetry, some novels too, some essays. For me, poetry is not only a way of playing with words, and the music of words, I could try to say that it's a form of sensitive consciousness. I think that after the great formal experiments of the French poetry at the beginning of the 20th century, for instance, surrealism and the freedom of words, now some poets, and I am one of them, try to reunify the critical reason and the feeling within the poetry. So, for me, it's absolutely normal to speak about what's happening in my society, to stand beside my people when it has to struggle for his rights, for his social conquest, for democracy. I don't think that writers can do the social changes, but they can speak as loud as they could. For instance, till the beginning of the war from Russia against Ukraine, I proposed to launch a worldwide chain of poems for peace. Now more than 300 poets from all over the world took part in this chain of poems, including some poets of the belligerent countries, like Dmytro Chistyak from Ukraine, or Vyacheslav Kuprianov from Russia. It's very tiny, it's very little action, but in a world where we are all threatened by the ghost of war, in some countries, real war, terrible war, but everywhere, maybe the threatening of a third world war, I think that we cannot remain silent.
With the popularity of media and dissemination of information and the lack of control over what gets disseminated, I think that writers do have an extremely important role to play. Now, against that backdrop, how do you balance artistic freedom with political and social engagement in your work?
I get to reformulate. How I make a balance between my personal feelings and what happened into the society.
I also had, for example, in your work, you kind of work with different forms. It could be, for example, I think almost all of you work with dark humor. There are stylistic choices in your work. Writing your own, there's also autofictional elements where you're writing about your experiences, but you're also adopting different styles, magical realism, for example, and different styles in your writing.
Yes.
So that's what I was referring to.
How to make the point from my point of view,
Yes.
to the point of view of what happens into the society. It is a challenge we have to relever, and it is a very, very deep question. It is a very deep question, because when you write, when you write, you don't think particularly that your work. You don't say, I will write for this and say that and say this. You don't do it. It is not the way the things go. You have something to say because you are someone, and you have the means to say that. You have the means. It's like a superpower, and you feel that you have this superpower to say things, and the political points where you are stand, it is inside of you. You want, you will not, you will not share the things deep into you. They are mixed. It is like a maelstrom, a tornado into your body, and it is already difficult to manage this thing, and then make it go out. It's another challenge, very difficult to manage. But you come with all you are when you are taking this stance. And if you are communist, if you are, it will go out. If you are like greedy, it will go out. If you are crazy, it will go out. If you are racist, like Salil, one of my preferred authors, it will go out. And this is my point.
Let me clarify that question. What I meant was, for example, in your work on the cocoa industry, there was a lot of historical research on the work. And then in Standing Heavy, for example, it started with the reflections on the different generations of people and different narratives and perspectives and different literary styles. So each work has a very different approach to it, which is what I was trying to get at.
Okay. And it is the same thing, I think we are writing one single book all our life long. One single book. But every book is like a chapter of what will be your book, what will be your life book when you will die. And a chapter, it depends on... For example, speaking about cocoa, documentation is the basic, it is a basic. Everybody is delighted to eat chocolate, and no one think about the sweat behind chocolate. And while and people know that it is good, but for sure, it is a colonial thing. There is a lot of suffering behind, but it is good, And every eater of chocolate knows that there is something, but it is sweet. And me, what I have to bring is the history of this thing, and say, no, it is. Yes, it is sweet, but it comes from that pain, from that things, etc., etc. And it is. And sometimes you have to give information before make sensitivity into the readers. I'm not sure that I am clear, but I try my best.
Can you repeat the question, please?
It was about balancing artistic freedom with political or social engagement.
Yeah. Well, I think I was actually puzzled by the word balancing, because balancing sometimes means to do something in order to survive. And if you are thinking about political freedom as a writer, it means that you are a political writer. And it means that actually you are in a risky position, especially in the time of the instability or in the country with lack of democracy. But generally, balancing is also understanding the limits to which you will be correctly understood, and limits where you shouldn't go not to upset the readers or the society or something else with your statements, which can be too revolutionary or too provocative. Because, political writers, they are not only writing about politics, about society. Sometimes actually they are political activists, openly or not, and they want to divide the readers, or they want to win part of the readers from somebody else, etc. In my case, for example, it's not really connected with what I just said, but in the time of the war, you don't want to upset the readers with, even if you have ideas which you think they are justifiable, but if they are negative, in the time of the war, you would rather not share them, because you need society to stay together, consolidated against the enemy. And there are completely new rules which are not connected with censorship, but connected with self-censorship. So people who are trying to destabilize the society, even with correct messages, they are bringing, well, not evil, but I mean they are breaking the unity of the country. So I think for Ukrainian writers now, it's very important to understand how not to break the stability and unity of the readers of the society. And this is a serious issue because, yes, I want to criticize lots of people in the Ukrainian government, including President Zelensky, but I'm not doing this now, in order not to become too political and not to be also used as an instrument against another political force. So, I mean, yes, there is a way out. You can just write crime stories, but if you are a political writer, you cannot write crime stories. You are writing what you want to write, and you are trying to share a message. So your vision. Yeah.
Yes. I'm living in a country where officially and in fact there is a freedom of writing, a freedom of expression, but there is a kind of censorship, a sweet, soft censorship, which is a censorship of market. And unfortunately, a lot of writers work to produce new products for the market, for the book markets. I think it's not the duty. Of course, everybody does what he wants, maybe what he can. But I think that the real duty of a writer should not be to work for nourishing the market, the book market. I think we have to try to seek the truth and tell the truth, even if we have to pay some risk for that. For instance, in France, if you say some things about capitalism, for instance, you can be absolutely sure that you will not have a lot of literary prize and not a lot of articles in the newspapers. So but in life you have to know what you want to do. To answer your question more directly, I could say that we cannot avoid politics as citizens and as artists, as human beings. But politics is one thing, art is something else. I have a friend, a US poet living in New York. He says politics is a left hand and poetry is a right hand. It's necessary to make a good connection between the right and the left hand, but it's not the same hand. You cannot confuse them. Another poet, the great Greek poet Yanis Ritsos, used to say, at the end of his life, I never betrayed the star of the people and the star of poetry, the star of beauty. Two different stars, but in the same sky. Yeah. And I think that if you are a poet committed in social struggles for peace, for freedom and so on, for democracy, but if you do bad poetry, it doesn't help your aim, your struggle. The first thing is to make good poetry, real poetry, poetry which gives joy to people. I think that we have to say the truth and at the same time to produce a kind of joy which helps people to live and fight. That's what I try to do in my poetry.
Let me just react what Andrey said of my friend Andrey. I don't have any balance at all. Let me tell you that. No balance at all. No, I don't think I don't think about unity, nation. My country was at war too, and I don't care of what people will think of what I am saying right now. In this moment, I am like totally free. When writing, absolutely provocating, far, not far, it is none of my business. I have no break. I have no break in my writing car. And the thing is that while writing, I cut off myself from society. And this moment is a very, very great moment, absolute moment of freedom. And then when I come back, people can say, you had said that, you said that. That's it. I have already said, and no balance at all.
I would reframe that question. I meant integrating, writing and artistic as well as social and political engagements. The emphasis was not really on balance, okay? So, but anyway, I mean, there's so much to unpack in, what each of you have said. But because they work across different genres and have different topics and themes, I'm trying to bring some sort of structure to the discussion by taking one theme at a time. I know you mentioned very interesting things about censorship and about poetry and image, and used a fascinating metaphor to sort of make it clearer as well. But just to sort of keep the discussion within the scheduled time and to organize it for the audience, I would just follow a particular pattern. But thank you so much for your comments on that. Now, just to sort of give this more focus to your work and also to sort of enable you to talk more about your national or other contexts, I would like you to keep one of your works in mind when I ask you about the next question. And I know all of you have written about so many different topics and different themes, and it might be quite a bit to sort of ask you to do that. But perhaps you could go with your latest book or, one of your books or one of your characters. So I'd like you to sort of comment on, I think maybe to break it down and to make it easier, why don't I give you a question? So in your case, you can think about one of your books, and you could start by talking about how your experience as a Ukrainian writer shaped your views on the writer's role in conflict and resistance against the backdrop of the war.
Well, it's quite difficult to explain or to answer this question without giving more information, me giving you more information about situation in Ukraine before the war, etc. So I don't want to spend too much time, but I mean, I was talking about the fragile society and why one should have brakes in the car and one shouldn't. I mean, it depends on the car make also and on the age of a driver. I would say I am an old experienced driver. I had already spent years in a car without brakes. Now I'm trying to control where my car is going. Ukraine is a big country, actually, size of France, with many minorities, with the two major languages, Russian and Ukrainian, spoken. The only state language is Ukrainian. Ukrainian language was attacked and almost destroyed by Russian Empire over 400 years. And actually, Russian language was used as an instrument of assimilation. And I write fiction in Russian, non-fiction in Russian, Ukrainian, and English, and books for children in Ukrainian. But I'm ethnic Russian, so actually this fact makes somebody already unhappy, you should understand. And I am a political Ukrainian, and my books were banned in Russia from 2004. And from 2014 it is illegal to bring my books to Russia, although I write in Russian. So this is my situation, in which actually I have to balance, I have to write, to continue writing, and for that actually I should be in a more or less stable position. I'm patriot of Ukraine, no doubt. I want Ukraine to be independent, part of European Union, civilized, with no corruption, with very high educational standards. Education is a very important thing. Kerala knows what is education. I mean, Ukraine used to be very educated. I mean, people are reading less now, which means that writer has connection with a tiny percentage of population, maybe 10, 15%. That's why the writers in Ukraine, those who are active, they are also becoming public figures. So they write articles, essays, they go on radio, on TV, almost never they are invited. So they are addressing the society. And actually, when I wrote my, not last, but actually 3 novels ago in 2017, I wrote a novel, Grey Bees, about Donbass, about people of Donbass who found themselves in the no-man's zone, in the gray zone between positions of Ukrainian army and positions of Russian army and Russian separatists. And I mean, these people, they never thought in which country they lived. They had no political interest, and they were told by local bosses for whom to vote. And suddenly they found themselves without country, without post office, pharmacy, no shops, no electricity, nothing. And actually, and these people were forgotten in the war. So people in Ukraine or in Russia, they were talking only about their heroes and the traitors. And these people belonged to nobody. And I decided to write about them, to give them voice, in order just to remind people that actually there are people who are not guilty that they were ignorant, politically ignorant, because they were not educated, they were not asked to read, they were not explained what does it mean to be a citizen of the country. And this is a novel about 2 49-year-old young retired people, ex-miners, who were the only inhabitants of the abandoned village in the gray zone, who hated each other before, and now they had to help each other because there is nobody else. And the main character, he is a beekeeper. So in this war, in the beginning, he thinks that he is defending not his country, he is defending his beehives, his bee families. And then actually he is trying to take his bees away from the war. And first he goes to Ukrainian controlled territory, and he is mistreated because of the local conflicts. So he goes to annexed Crimea, and he sees how local Muslims are mistreated by Russian Secret Service, Crimean Tatars. And in the end, he decides to come back to this no man's territory because he belongs to this territory, and he hopes it will be alive again. So, I mean, I decided to write this story not as a political story, it's a human story in the time of the war, about human soul, about every separate human person who is involved and whose life is deformed by the war, by the political events. And I wanted these people not to be forgotten, and I still want them not to be forgotten.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on that. So, this is a work of fiction, a diary of an invasion, and the multiple sequels to that. So, that question I asked was to sort of help us to discuss writing fiction and writing non-fiction. So could you tell me very briefly about writing the diary of an invasion and the multiple sequels to it as well, and keeping the topic of social change and writers' roles in it?
Well, when Russia bombed for the first time all of Ukraine on 24th of February 2022, I stopped writing fiction for 2.5 years. I could not write fiction because, I mean, if you hear explosions, you have different ideas. You don't want to use fantasies. And I started writing what was happening to my family, to our friends. And actually, we became, in the beginning of the war, IDPs, sort of displaced persons. We went to the Western Ukraine. Then we became official refugees for several months in Marseille, in France. Then we returned back home, and we are now living listening to the explosions, and nobody sleeps in the night because you have sirens. So in this situation, you become a chronicle. You write chronicles. You describe what happens every day. And the Diary of Invasion is the first diary which starts in December 2021, before the war, but when everybody was talking that the war is coming. And it ends in July 2022. And it covers many stories. It's written in a form of a diary, but I mean, they are like big essays, the texts. And actually, some of the characters, all the characters are alive. This is the difference, actually. When you write nonfiction and you write about somebody, it means that this somebody exists, and what you write is or was happening to these people. For example, we had a couple of friends who were retired, one retired doctor and his wife retired lawyer, and they are in dire of invasion. They were trying to get out of Kiev, but he was in the hospital. He had his legs amputated because of diabetes, and nobody could transport him to the border. And then in the end, his wife managed to take him in a car from the hospital to Germany. And then he had to be operated again, and his legs were cut off again. And they lived near Frankfurt for several months, and I visited them 3 times. And already after the Diary of Invasion was published, first Valentin, he died in Germany, and she was trying to come with his ashes to Kiev, and it was difficult. Then she came, she buried him, and she died herself. So, I mean, this is the real life story. And I mean, it could be a novel, but it will never be a novel because, I mean, if you deal with this harsh reality, so everything is so real and so dramatic that you have no right to use your fantasy. And so, I mean, the second book of the diary is called Our Daily War. It's already less about our family, but more about other people, other stories in Ukraine. And I'm writing now 3rd book about life during the war in Ukraine.
That's hard. I have never written nonfiction. I'm always in the fantasy, and it is my choice. Even during the war in Ivory Coast, I was writing fantasy, and I believe in in disconnection. I believe in disconnection because sometimes life can be very, very, very hard, and our brain can't support what our life can be hard. So I am like a big champion of disconnection. You know, during the war in Ivory Coast, while the bullets and they were throwing bullets everywhere, I used to cook and invite people to have a good lunch during the fights. And you know, it is hard, but it is a very skills of mine to be disconnected of the reality.
Well, I mean, I cook a lot, and we have friends also during the alarms and explosions, and we go to the bars because bars are the best bomb shelters.
So I have a few questions in relation to your works to sort of foreground the theme of the discussion. And I'd like you to focus in particular on Standing Heavy. So why don't you tell us about a little bit about it, and then I'll add to the points I'd like you to focus on.
On Standing Heavy?
Standing Heavy, yes.
This book make me travel everywhere in the world, Standing Heavy. And depends on the country I was, there is like a different pitch coming from people, not from me, you know. In France, they say that Standing Heavy was like reverse anthropology. You know, in Spain, everybody was sure that it was like quietly a non-fiction book, an experience from a security guard, which describing the world from his point of view. That was in Spain. In Ivory Coast, it is like a migrant diary, you know, and I have never think about all those things while writing this book. For me, it was just like an anti-capitalistic book, a political book. The thing is that in the capitalism, while writing against the capitalism, you have to speak about colonialism, you have to speak about migration, and you have to speak about consumerism, consumption, c'est comme ça qu'on dit. You have to speak it, and it was a condensed of all those things, all my rejection of my capitalism experience in France during 11 years. It was like a statement when I go back to my country. And this is what I wrote. And what is interesting is how people take for themselves the thing you wrote. This is the magic of writing and inventing something.
Now, I'm going to add to that. Standing Heavy offers unique perspectives on immigration and labor in France, told from the point of view of Ivorian security guards. What drew you to this theme? Can I sort of call this an autofiction?
It is not an autofiction. French journalists say that it was very trendy as a book, and while going on the TV show, they present me like, the great, strong African man, security guard, which has written a funny novels, funny. And it wasn't that. It was a writer which had an experience, a security guard experience, and talk about this. It's not autofictional at all. I have been security guard like six weeks only, and took some notes during these 6 weeks. And I have took this employment just to buy myself a return ticket, plane ticket to go back to Ivory Coast. Six weeks. And it was, for me, it was an experience of a writer who was security guard. No nonfiction, no autofiction parts in this. Everything was set up except the description of the scenes that I witnessed into those shops. But to link all those scenes, I have made like I invented a way, I invented a character, I invented a structure, a non-linear structure. Important. I have like German skills. I like structures. I like machine that works well.
Fascinating. It was brilliant. Very, very interesting. Now, coming to your work, sir, you work on poetry, and again, they have so many works which are so different from each other, and it's really difficult to incorporate many works in, within the body of a discussion with 3 different authors. So I will sort of briefly talk about the different works in which you have highlighted poetry's role in personal and societal context. So I really want to pick up one of your works called I Am Not a Robot. And I think it's an extremely important work to discuss at this time in history. And the anthology talks about technology and dehumanization and the importance of maintaining one's humanity in an increasingly automated world. So could you talk us through some aspects of your work and keeping the broader theme of change in changing world and the writer's role?
First, I wanted to say something more general about the question of relationship between politics and literature. Because, in France, after World War II, after the resistance against the Nazi, the German Nazi, there was a big discussion among writers about la poésie de circonstances poetry. And a kind of trial against those poets who were involved in such poetry, fighting poetry. Because there was a suspicion, they were suspected to betray poetry to make politics. Most of them never answered. For instance, Aragon, Paul Éluard, they didn't accept to answer because they were involved in a fight for freedom, for life, and for them there was no discussion, no problem. It was their life. But one of them, a younger poet, said, it's not poetry of circumstances, it's poetry against circumstances. It's quite different. You have to stand in front of the situation. I can speak about two things. One of my last books is about, the title in French is Si les symptômes persistent, consultez un poète. It means if the symptom persists, consult a poet. Very serious book. Don't smile. Mostly about poverty in Paris. Because when you walk in the street of Paris now, in this very rich town, rich country, you can meet homeless people at each corner, each street, at each crossroad, people begging for money. When you stop your car, they ask you for money, everywhere. And these people don't exist. They come from Africa, for some of them. They come from Syria, because of the war. A lot of them came from Syria, from Ethiopia, from eastern countries sometimes, quite often. And I made a whole book of poems describing what I've seen in the street of Paris. Victor Hugo made such a thing a long time before in a book called Choses vues, things seen in the street. And I tried to do the same thing. It's, I think one of the tasks, one of the possible duty of a writer is to give evidence to things that we don't want to look, to hidden things, hidden people, silent people, dumb people. It's a work of testimony, to testify. It's something important. But we cannot make only testimony. I think that we can also, with the means of imagination, try to make rebirth some hope. Now, everywhere, in Western countries, obviously, maybe less in Southern countries, people think that there is no future. People think that we are going to a collapse, a general collapse, because of climate changes, because of war, because of social problems, because of artificial intelligence, robots, and so on. Okay, that's true. But in the same time, I think that mankind is not ready to commit self-suicide. And there are some reasons to hope. We have to find them and to push them as strong as we can do. For instance, now I'm just writing a book, a big book, about what I call le peuple monde, the world people. Because in the suburb of Paris and all the great towns, people come from all the corners of the world. They come from all over the world. It's a new people. Now, it makes not really a people. It's, yeah, in English the same word, people and people. But in French there are two words, population, the population, and people it's more political meaning. It means connected in a same faith, the same uh, destiny, the same project sometimes. And now it's not the case. People are spread, are divided. But if these people becomes to feel that he holds within his hands the fate of the world, he will become a real world people. And for me, it's the way of hope. Excuse me, I didn't answer your question, but never mind.
That's also, you did made it a part of the discussion, so it was fine. We have about 15 minutes left, and Sir would like to read a poem in French towards the end, and I will read the English translation. So we have about 10 minutes before that for questions, if you may have any.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. Thank all four of you for a wonderful and lively discussion. There was a lot of talk on the writer's role or writing in politics. We mentioned unity in times of war, wisdom not to be used by political factions, politics and poetry going hand in hand or two different hands, and not having a break. But you mentioned not having a break, but you also mentioned disconnection. So what I'd like to know as a writer and a poet myself is where is the responsibility of the writer in personal and financial risk to ourselves and our families when we're writing, whether it is political engagement or disconnection?
The answer is simple. There is no financial issue while writing. Never think about money. You will die before being rich. just and the responsibility about the family, you have a responsibility with or without money into your pocket. The responsibility is to give education to your children. And I think I did some work toward this direction. And I think my two kids, they have something. And I'm okay with what they have. And they are. But financial issue is not an issue for me, you know. I think as a screenwriter, I have earned more money than as you know that just one movie and you have the money of 2 books. Technically, we own to the parts of we are the most poorer workers in the world. You know, between Standing Heavy and Comrade Papa, I have spent like 4 years writing a novel. 4 years, and I remember I have earned like 50,000 euro for Standing Heavy. Just divide it into the mouth of 4 years, and you will see that I am like, and I'm okay with that because I just need beers, some alcohol sometime, and I just need to go to the bush sometime, so I don't have a lot of needs. And all I bring to my family is education and intelligence, and I think that is enough.
Well, I mean, in my case, I'd say that I'm supported by my books that were written 40 years ago, and they're still in print in many countries. So, in a way, that's why I'm not usually worried about financial situation, although there are other issues that can make life difficult. But yes, in some countries, actually, a writer can be blackmailed by the government, by the politicians, and can be either forced out of the country or his books can be removed from the bookshops, like many Russian writers are now living abroad and their books not sold in Russia, and they don't have readers abroad, they have readers in Russia. So they are cut off from financial basis, and they are in difficulties. But it can happen in other countries too.
Yeah. Each situation is different. For instance, in France, poets are not paid, usually. Even very well-known old poets, they have generally to make another job, to be able to write and to publish. Sometime, at the end of their life, some poems are put in anthologies for schools. It's a little better, but you cannot make money with poetry. You can travel sometime, make friends, discover a lot of people, and have a life, a very living life and beautiful life. But you can't have any money. So you have to fight for life.
Question is very simple to all the three authors. Is there any writing which is not political? Is there any writing which is not political?
Yes, pornographic novels are not political.
You know, I never wrote pornographic novels, unfortunately. I am too young. But I wrote a lot of love poems. Maybe more love poems than political poems. But, and usually people think it's not political, but actually it is. The relationship between men and women, for instance. The question of freedom, respect in love. The question of love and solidarity. The question of the passion and le malheur d'aimer, comment on peut traduire ça? Le malheur d'aimer. Yeah, the evil of love, as a lot of people think. It's very political questions indeed. Maybe the most political questions are the questions of love now.
I think there is writing which are not political instead of pornography. But even pornography is political. I forget that. The political is about concerning people. Concerning each other. It's about the management of the city and how we interact together and live together. And some writing are so bad that they don't concern no one. So it is not political.
So have you got the translation in French of the poem Simple?
In French, the title is Facile. Facile. C'est assez facile. Changer la nuit en jour. Le soleil fait ça tous les matins. C'est assez facile. Changer la glace en eau. Quelques rayons suffisent. C'est assez facile. Faire naître des fleurs au bout de nos vieilles branches. Un peu de printemps suffit. C'est assez facile. Changer ce monde inégal et injuste. Il suffit pour cela d'assez peu. S'unir.
Now I will read the English translation of the poem by Alan Dent, and the poem is titled Simple, and it goes like this. It is quite easy to change day to night. The sun does it every morning. It is quite simple to change ice to water. A few rays will do. It is quite simple to produce flowers at the end of old branches. A bit of spring is enough. It is quite simple to change this unequal and unjust world. Not much is needed to come together. I thought that's a fascinating way to end the discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a really lovely day. Thank you so much to the speakers for their time and for joining us for the lively discussion.